How's it, everyone? Welcome back to another video, and in studio I've got Vickers.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Cool. We're going to talk a little bit about lead generation, especially if you're a local business or a direct-to-consumer business looking to generate leads. And I think today's topic is for you. We're going to talk a little bit about the fact that 95% of your leads are not converting, and in a way that is okay. We're going to talk a little bit about the benchmarks of what a good lead conversion rate looks like, and all industries are different, obviously, as a little bit of a disclaimer, but we're going to share some insights and perspectives from what we've seen. And we're going to also unpack the 95-5 rule, and that is that 95% of your leads aren't ready to buy, and what you can do instead in order to get them ready to say yes to your product or service. Now, if you enjoy marketing and business content, then this is the show for you. From the bottom of my heart, I would encourage you to like and subscribe, and maybe even hit the notification bell for more videos like this. Right, Vix. Nice to have you in studio again, and I think this is quite a good topic, because most small business owners are under the impression that every single lead that comes through, whether it's a Facebook lead or a website lead or a referral, is going to convert, but that's not necessarily the case. So if someone would say, my leads are not converting, how do you handle this conversation, and how do we get people to understand that this is basically the norm?
Yeah, I think it immediately goes to the bigger picture, or the conversation immediately goes to the bigger picture. And I think while you look at every lead as a possible opportunity to convert, it's really the case that is going to happen, as we've just said. And I think it's necessary to take a step back and to look at just the bigger ecosystem, and keep in mind what you are doing and what you are building, rather than trying to hunt down every lead and make them convert, because there's a lot more elements that surrounds that lead to convert. And the context is very important, where somebody sees your ad for the first time, especially if it's a meta ad, because that is direct response marketing. It's, the people aren't necessarily always ready to buy, and even in the consideration phase. So you kind of like getting in front of them with your ads, and it's creating that pattern interrupt, or that awareness, initial awareness. Now, you might get lucky, and a person might maybe be further along in their decision-making journey in terms of your product or service, but that very seldom happens, and that's where the 5% comes in. That's where the lucky 5% really comes in, and a lot of businesses, or everybody, is hoping for that 5%, and everybody's competing for that 5%, but nobody really talks about the 95% of what happens behind the scenes. And I think sometimes you just need to zoom out and take a bigger picture approach and a longer term view on your lead generation strategy. Although it's still important to make your marketing profitable upfront, and mine that 5% and do everything you can to maximize that 5% to convert them. But that's not the end all be all. And I think where the real conversation also comes in is where what do you do to convert the 95% of those leads, and how does that long term strategy look like, or rather the ecosystem?
I think people just have unrealistic expectations on what a good lead generation strategy looks like, and it's important to understand that at the end of the day, people are going to express interest, but not every single person, like you say, is going to be ready to open their wallets in order to pay for the specific service or product. And I mean, people go through their own journey when it comes to making decisions, and it's a matter of understanding every industry has got its own customer journey system, journey that people have to go through in order to decide whether this is the product for them or not. But at the end of the day, it's really crucial for the marketer or the business owner to understand that journey, and then realize, okay, cool, how can we re-engineer necessary strategies, messaging, and so forth, in order to communicate with those people in a way that is going to convince them to convert, but at the same time not having the expectation that every single one is going to convert. And we can maybe even look at some real life examples and some of the businesses that we have, because, for example, at VF Media, we generate over 300 leads a month for the agency, but the reality is only a small percentage of them make it onto a demonstration call, and then a very small percentage actually makes it into the agency as a client. And the reason that's normal is because that's just the reality, that not every single client or every single prospect that's going to inquire is going to be the ideal fit for the services that we have, or vice versa. We might not be an ideal fit for the need that they actually need in their side as well.
Yeah, so in my experience, you also, when you do look at different businesses and different lead generation businesses or businesses that rely on leads, you also need to look at your ticket value of the actual product, because that determines a great deal of how big the percentage upfront conversion is going to be. Like, if it's an impulse buy, you might be seeing numbers of, anything from 10 to, in some cases, even 25 to 30%. For instance, if it's a very low cost product or service, but the more expensive that product becomes, the more consideration there is, and the lesser initial, or the lesser the percentage is going to be naturally, and the longer the nurture is going to be, and the more attention and time you actually need to put into your sales. And that's the other thing I think a lot of people miss to convert more upfront leads, is like they underestimate how much time they need to put in to the front end sale compared to their product. And I've been in numerous situations where, I've consulted people where they literally just sent a quote, and then it's like a 100K quote or a 50K quote, and they just send those quotes out without context, without actually really understanding the customer's needs. And in the meantime, that customer is going to look at that quote, have zero context as to what they're looking at a lot of the time. If they didn't have a proper consultation or a proper conversation with you up front, they're going to go to somebody else who's going to give them the time and attention, and ultimately that person is going to get the sale. So I think it's just also understanding these dynamics of what happens in the back end of these bigger, businesses as well.
I think you hit the nail on the head. People send a quote without real context to why the price is the price. Because I think most people would look at a quote and then go, but why the hell is it so much? And there is no real context to why that is the price. So someone is going to go, well, this is not worth it. But meanwhile, you might not be aware of it, but it might be better quality material. It might be a more superior intellectual property in the actual service that gets delivered. It might be the fact that that specific strategy has got a proven track record of succeeding, so therefore there's a higher probability of you getting your money back after investing the money, for the service. But a lot of people don't really know how to articulate the value of the product or service to the customer, so that the customer can justify the price of the quote in their own minds.
Yeah, but the other thing is that customers are also not always educated on what they are buying. So
True.
I think that's also where we need to, if you do run a more complicated business that has more nuances and more custom stuff.
Well, the agency is a classic example, because
Exactly.
people come and say, can you help me with my social media? But in the sense, social media is so broad. It's gotten so broad, where it's not, back in the day, just posting on Facebook anymore. Like, what specifically within the social media realm do you need help with? Do you need help with TikTok, Facebook, Instagram? Or do you need more sales from these channels specifically, because that would affect the strategy that you adapt? Or do you need more brand awareness, because that will obviously be, or do you need more followers and organic reach, because again that will be a completely different strategy? And I think most consumers use labels to describe a very specific pain point, but that label in the specific industry that business owner might find himself or herself in actually means a million different things.
Yeah, and I think it's also like, people also coming to us from an agency perspective, they don't always know what they need necessarily, unless they have a lot of experience and have done it for a couple of years, and they know, okay, cool, Google Meta works. This is kind of like where we get most of our leads from. But there's also a lot of people that don't have that context. And we spend an average of probably, if I have to estimate, just based on working with the sales team, around 2 to 3 hours on the average prospect that is genuinely a fit for us. And that's all, creating context, understanding their business, understanding their pain points, understanding where they need to be, where they want to go, and then applying that with what we can provide them to get them there. And there's a deep level of understanding from our side that goes into what's required to grow their businesses. And ultimately, like, not a lot of businesses realize how much time and attention goes into this, and finding the perfect or right fit for a particular client. And that's where, just if we just sent marketing quotes out to people who inquired without context, there would be a gross misalignment in terms of what they actually get versus what they thought they were getting.
100%.
And the other thing is, that might not always be what they actually need. And we'd also close a lot less deals if we just did that. And it's just not ideal.
Yeah, I think let's talk about the fact that we have the methodology called the 95-5 rule, which is understanding that 95% of the leads that we generate are not going to convert on the spot. But there is small little things that you can do in order to get people, maybe a higher percentage of those people, to say yes. Lead generation is just a numbers game. That is really the conversation of today. And if you feel like 95% of your leads are not converting, then I want to say it's actually normal. Like you're not. It obviously depends on the industry and depends on the product and the service and many different things. But if you're frustrated that a very small percentage of your leads are converting, then I want to say don't be discouraged. That is just the name of the game. You need to be confident that the product is worth selling. Don't get discouraged with your efforts. What you should be doing is asking yourself, how can we position and how can we connect and chat to the client and stay in touch with the potential prospect on the other side in such a way where we are the first business they think of when they're actually ready for the service. And on top of that, is there small little things that we can do in order to increase the likelihood of them saying yes? But if they don't say yes, that's okay. So we talk about the 95-5 rule, which means 95% of the people aren't going to convert, but 5% might be ready to buy. That's great. That 5%, you're going to pick up the phone once, you're going to send them a quote, and they're going to say yes. But that is just the 5%. So what in your mind can you share with us today from the 95% perspective, like the leads that are not converting? Let's maybe start with what businesses can do in order to help increase the percentage of leads that convert. Is there something specific that comes to mind based on the businesses that we've been involved with?
Yeah, like the first thing initially that you can do just to make sure that you're maximizing your upfront leads. I think that's the first thing that we need to just unpack is like, how do you firstly maximize the front end leads that you can possibly, convert initially? And
what would that practically look like?
So practically, I think a big portion of that is really credibility from a branding perspective. Like, you need to look at, how does customers perceive you? Like if they go to your socials, do you look credible from a social perspective? Do you have posts? Are you maybe showing how your service is getting delivered in your posts? Are you showing your premises? Are you showing things like this to make the people feel more comfortable and, maybe just understand what the setting is of your business and how professional it's being delivered, et cetera, because those are subconscious questions that people have that just needs to be addressed immediately. Same goes for how much followers and stuff you have and, how much just if there's posts and regular posts on your pages, stuff like that. So, you just need to cover your basics initially. And then it's also about how your branding looks from the outside. Does your branding appeal to the type of audience that you're trying to attract? Is it professional? Is it, is it positioned, your company positioned well? And then the second thing really from a credibility standpoint is just Google reviews and reviews in general, so that when people see your ad and they go and research your business, like, do you have reviews to back up that, whatever you say in your ads or whatever they see is actually a true reflection of the actual service that they are going to expect. So those are really the baseline stuff that you need to check off. That's just credibility and branding as the first step. So that's going to help you maximize those upfront leads initially.
Yeah, so that's the foundation of things that you should be doing in order to increase the probability of people saying yes. And that's not like there's no two ways about it. Like, it's not a non-negotiable, actually, at the end of the day. It's like, this is something you need. You need a website. You need a place where people can learn more about the business should they want to. The moment you don't have a website, people go, well, is this a legitimate business? Same thing with your branding, like you said. Like, it has to be professional. I'm not saying it has to be 5-star Gucci, Versace, Dolce & Gabbana type, brand that you're building, but or an Apple or a Nike, but it has to be something that's clean and modern and at least resonates with them from a professional standpoint. Goes, okay, this looks like a legitimate business. They've got a logo, I can see it on their website, I can see all these things. And at the same time, you're speaking about reviews. Nobody wants to be the first person to try a product or service unless it's an iPhone that they're buying. Like, everybody wants to be the first person to get the new iPhone, but that's kind of like it. After that, it's mainly, or a new Tesla or whatever, right? But after that, nobody wants to be the first person to experience your product or service because they want to know what are other people saying. So that is the branding elements, if we want to call it that. And on a more practical lead conversion side, I'm assuming it's going to be things like pick up the phone, call them as quickly as possible. Or what would you say?
That's the next layer. Is like, if we go one layer deeper, if you're actually running lead generation ads and the branding aspect is checked off, now it's about your lead conversion process, your upfront lead conversion process. So obviously it's how you manage your leads. Do you have a dedicated channel through which it comes through, like your website, etc.? Are you collecting the relevant information and actually putting those filters in place to get higher quality leads directly, or more intentful leads rather, directly from your website, so that you don't waste unnecessary time on leads that might not, be interested right now or in the foreseeable future. So that could easily be done by just having 2 or 3 additional questions, just qualifying them on the very basic stuff for your business. Not over qualifying and having 10 or 20 questions and properly vetting them, but just 2 or 3 questions, just to create that little bit of resistance, just so you make sure that you have a high intent database at the end of the day. That's the first thing. And the second thing is like just having a CRM to manage your leads and to know what leads are in what stages of your pipeline, when you need to follow up with who, what notes are behind what leads, etc. When you need to call them next. It's basic stuff like that. That's just lead management that you just need to check off.
I think 99% of the companies that do lead generation that I've at least consulted with back in the day, I can honestly say don't use a CRM, and their biggest excuse is that there's not enough time to update it and manage it.
Managing a CRM, dude, that's always where everybody falls short. Always, even like us back in 2 years ago, it took us a while to get into routine of actually properly managing our CRM. But yeah, that's a common plus.
But that's really so much juice that just gets left behind. I don't think people are squeezing all the juice out of the lead conversion process. And you're spending all this money on leads, and let's say you've built a site and you've invested money into looking professional and you've got a good business going. Like, I don't think people realize how much money is actually going to waste, and they focus on the fact that 95% of leads are converting, but at the same time they're not really doing anything to increase a higher percentage of leads either. And that, I think, CRMs is, for me, is like the low-hanging fruit. Is like, not just are you using it, because you can say to someone, hey, are you using a CRM? Yeah, we are. We're using a Google Sheet or a Monday or a Go High Level or a HubSpot. And then they think the question ends there. No, now the question is, how regularly are you updating it? How effectively are you using it? Do you have automations in place, for different stages of that process as well, etc.? I'm assuming.
Yeah, so the next thing is just automations, really. It's like, as soon as a lead comes in, what kinds of automations are going out to that particular lead? One thing that's particularly effective is something like text message or WhatsApp automations immediately. Also prompting a response from leads, because I often see companies sending automations and stuff like that, but those automations never prompt direct responses and don't engage leads immediately. And I think the sooner you can engage leads as well, and maybe just spark a conversation about what exactly it is they need, the higher your likelihood of actually converting that lead, because now you are actively showing interest in what that client wants when you prompt them to respond to you, rather than just sending them bleak marketing messages. So I think that's also been very, very pivotal in how we do lead generation.
Just to touch on that, like, at the end of the day, and I think we've mentioned this, but I do think it's very important to highlight, is that nothing beats picking up the phone and actually dialing a lead.
Yeah.
Like, nothing beats that. Like, we live in a world where everybody is using AI in order to improve efficiency, and yes, AI can be very powerful in streamlining the process for you, but nothing beats voice to voice. What is your pain point? Is this something you're looking for? Let's schedule an actual proper Zoom conversation in order to unpack this further.
I think people underestimate attention and how much attention to people's needs contributes to the sales process and converting leads.
Agreed.
So I think if you can pay more attention to your leads, that makes a big difference, and people actually do appreciate that. And where I think people trip up is like they feel like, people are not answering the phone, they're probably not interested, and
that's normal.
They create that kind of like subconscious negative feeling towards phoning leads,
and they're getting demotivated to phone leads.
And the 10% of leads that actually picks up and actually shows interest, that's normal, like we've said. And they actually appreciate you doing that. So I think if you can adopt that mindset to calling leads, it's going to help.
At the same time, I actually get excited that people are this lazy because it means that there's more businesses that we can invest and grow effectively, because the competition is less, because people are just lazy. When a business owner says, I'm not going to phone them because they're probably going to they're not going to answer anyway. I'm like, bro, like, seriously, you need to change your perspective on how to run this business. You need to change your perspective on what lead generation is all about. And it's almost like they live in a dream world where every lead that inquires is going to be ready to buy, ready to give them money, super excited about their product. They assume that they understand the business. They're almost insulted when people ask them about, but haven't you looked at the website? You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, people didn't look at the website, because the website is not there to sell them. The website's just there to create a further curiosity or interest.
Yeah, but we've also previously spoke about people don't intentionally read landing pages, ads, all of these things. They scan it,
exactly,
and they assume. And it's your job as the business owner or the salesperson to make sure that expectations is aligned from the get-go, really, and that they understand, the product or service.
So what we can conclude so far is that most of your leads are not going to convert, and that's okay. That is the norm. That's normal. If there is a rule of thumb, I'd say the 95-5 rule that would be applicable to most businesses. It could be 90-10 or 85-15, depending on the industry and depending on how effective you are at converting leads. But I like to be conservative, and I'm almost happy if we only convert 5% of our leads, because that is just, what I believe is the norm. I'd rather be overly conservative than overly ambitious and then set expectations that I can't meet. But that 95%, so we've given a few tips now on what you can do in order to increase the probability of that 5% to be 6 or 7 or 8 or 9%. And that's just be responsive, be proactive, use a CRM, actually pick up the phone and phone people, maybe do a bit of a qualification process so that you can filter good from bad leads, so you don't waste time on bad qualified leads. Automations and stuff like that, which can send people more testimonials and reviews and stuff that you've maybe potentially done for other prospects in your space. The 95% that don't convert, what would be a strategy for that? Like, what do you do? Because here's the thing, most people don't do anything with those leads.
Yeah.
Those leads just sit there somewhere in an email database, if that. And in fact, most people don't even have an email database for those leads. It's just, emails that got generated, database that's sitting there that's just gathering dust, or that it's not even stored anywhere.
Yeah.
So what would your opinion be on that?
Yeah, I just want to mention one last thing on immediate lead conversion and or maximizing your upfront leads, and that's also tracking what's happening in your sales process. Because people don't understand how many leads they're actually getting, how many of those leads actually translate into quotes, how many of those leads actually translate into bookings, and how many actually accept the service at the end of the day, and where the drop-offs are. Because the moment something in your business or in your marketing system crashes and there's less quotes, or the moment there's less sales, where do you go to find the answer? So I just want to extend that and make sure that everybody understands the importance of tracking the sales process and every step of it.
Well, the thing is, you have to measure your lead conversion ratios, from ad to landing page conversion, from landing page to booking, from booking to show up, from show up to whatever the case may be, right? And I think in a way people don't track anything, so therefore they can't measure anything. And you can't optimize what you don't measure. So you can only optimize what you measure. So first, it starts with tracking the data. From tracking the data, you'll be able to see, we had a conversation not so long ago. It was you're like, hey, this has happened in one of the businesses. And I was like, well, what does the data say? And immediately we can go back and say, oh, this is where the issue lies. This is where the bottleneck is. This is where the friction is, purely because of the fact that the data is indicating that for us. And we don't have to now spitball about what we're going to do. And most founders find themselves in a position where they either spend more money on marketing in order to fix that problem, but meanwhile, you didn't need to. All you had to do was just have a conversation with someone, or it was just fixing a broken automation.
And it takes 20 minutes or 10 minutes to solve that problem, where some founders, they go and change everything, the ads, everything, and then they worsen the situation. So it could, and then they spend time on worsening the situation, which is just the worst scenario. But
it's just because they didn't know where to put their time and energy in order to fix the problem, because they'd never tracked anything, which means they couldn't measure where the drop-off is. And because they couldn't measure where the drop-off is, they couldn't optimize the process. So track, measure, optimize. I think that's about it on that front. So let's get back to the 95% of leads. Like I said, most people don't really do anything with that kind of data. We do certain things for all the businesses, actually, that we're involved with. We do something specific with that. Maybe we can allude and share some insight.
Let's start with, what do you do with all the leads that you've generated now that has some level of intent? And that you haven't converted. So basically, I think brand building, if you had to sum it up, it's just brand building. So there's some direct sales tactics that you can apply to that through, retargeting ads, a bit more aggressive from a retargeting perspective. Maybe push a special offer out to those particular leads. You can also run email marketing campaigns or weekly newsletters or whatever.
Educational type of content.
But I'm now specifically referring to more aggressive kind of tactics. So you can just push more aggressive sales kind of newsletters out there, giving people slightly aggressive emails or mailers and discounts and stuff like that. And then long-term wise, a good thing is always to mix, if you are aggressive, apply like a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 rule where, when you send 3 or 4 emails that's more educational and more brand building wise and more, tips and just educational related to your business, their common problems and issues and stuff, have 1 or 2 emails that also goes out that's a bit more aggressive from a sales perspective. And likewise with the ads, I think what we do as well is like we sometimes just run YouTube videos to our database on meta ads and stuff like that, and that's just educating your database and just keeping your presence in front of them. Really,
I think we underestimate how many people actually pay attention to that, because normally we would say nobody pays attention to that.
It feels like it sometimes.
It does feel like it sometimes. However, we've had so many people say, we've signed up because we've been following you for 2 or 3 years. We've followed the journey, or I enjoyed Vicus's conversation about this, or I've heard Gilbert say that, or I heard Jandre say this, and therefore I wanted to, explore an option with you guys. And I think it's just staying top of mind as well, because often someone would be interested but they're not ready, and then they realize they're not maybe ready from a business standpoint to take that step because they didn't have the information to determine whether they were ready or not. So they were like, we need the solution. But then when they learn more about the solution, they go, oh, you know what, there's a lot of stuff in my businesses that I still need to fix before I spend money on a specific solution. And then at 6 months to a year down the line, we've literally had a client. He was actually in the office the other day, and he walked in and he saw Wandile, and Wandile was, oh, is this, Mr. X? I remember I spoke to you in 2022, and he only became a client in 2024 or 2024. So he's now been a client for over a year. But back then he said, you know what, I want to take you guys on as an agency. However, I've got these issues that I need to fix. And where most people would have just said, you know what, fine, cool, it's all good, chat to us when you're ready. Thanks to our YouTube channel, thanks to our emails, thanks to our remarketing strategies, literally a year or 2 later, he came and said, look, I'm ready, let's do this. But how many other prospects, would he have been chatting to if we just went dead silent on him?
Yeah.
If he didn't see us around, if he completely forgot about us. And I think that's what people underestimate, is that lead generation, yes, there's short-term gains that can be made, but at the same time, if you're patient and consistent with your brand building initiatives, which is educating your customers, helping them overcome certain pain points as an additional value, that builds a level of trust and credibility, and you staying top of mind. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that it kind of like compounds over time, that will come and say, okay, cool, now I'm ready. And it will be harder for them, or it will be harder for other competitors to, I want to say, poach them in air quotes, because they've been building a relationship with this specific business over time.
Yeah.
Cool, man. I think, was there anything else that we can add that can add a little bit more value to this? I mean, I feel like we've unpacked quite a bit. Is there anything else? If not, all good.
No, not necessarily from my side. I think I just wanted to sum it up as, brand building, whether it's more aggressive or whether it's more passive, it just depends on the audience and your product and service, or how much education around your industry there is possibly to make a buying decision. That's going to determine how much education versus more direct sales kind of like content you push out there from a remarketing perspective and an email marketing perspective. But, that's pretty much it from my side to sum it up.
Yeah, in conclusion, it's okay. Most of your leads are not going to convert, and that's normal. So there's nothing wrong with you or your business. It's just now making sure you put the right systems in place to potentially increase that lead conversion rate from, let's say, hypothetical 5% to an 8 or a 9 or a 10%. But even so, even with all the effort in the world, you're never going to convert all your leads from at least our experience, and that's okay. But there's things that you can do to nurture that audience that didn't convert. And I think that's where the value lies, and that's where patience becomes the name of the game, and that's where consistency becomes the name of the game. And if you can be consistent and communicating with those people, and you can stay top of mind, eventually someone is going to say yes. And that will be additional bonus to all the leads that are already ready to buy. As well. And
that's how you build a real business.
And that's how you build a real business. So hope there was value in it for you guys. Like I said, if you enjoy marketing and business content, and this is the channel for you, so I'd like for you to like and subscribe. or if I may be so bold, maybe even hit the notification bell to be notified about more content like this. In the meantime, all the best. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers.